Hey guys, it's Sandro here, and today's video is a detailing vlog on this 2021 VW T-Roc, and here's a preview of what's about to come.
Does look like a completely different car.
It has been a while since my last detailing vlog, with available time being the main obstacle here. I'm so glad to be back with a new video, and I'll hopefully have another one in the pipeline soon. Now, while you guys have a general look at the vehicle, which I'll say is pretty typical condition-wise in some areas, well, not so great in other areas, I'll start with a little info about this car, my client and the job, and then we'll get straight into the detail. This VW T-Roc R-Line belongs to a very nice gentleman who is a repeat client of mine. I believe he purchased it as a second family car a couple of months ago, and his primary goals with the job were to have the exterior thoroughly cleaned and decontaminated, also addressing quite a bit of water spotting on the exterior glass, giving the wheels and engine bay a much needed clean with some protection, and he also highlighted his discontent with the stained leather seats, wanting them deep cleaned, sanitized and conditioned. Lastly was the paint and trims that could do with a little defect removal and just a bit of refinement to amplify the gloss and clarity, as well as the installation of a durable ceramic coating for added protection and easier future upkeep. Now, for those of you who may be newer to my work-orientated detailing vlogs, these videos are based on the professional detailing services I offer my customers. So in other words, all my clients have many options in selecting a number of different services with a number of different levels of quality that can be pursued that all relate to the condition of the vehicle, the client's own wants, and their available budget. Now, in truth, all the work I do these days is pretty much at the higher end of the detailing market, which basically means it's all very involved and time-consuming work. But even within that segment of the detailing market, there's still a lot of leeway in terms of how far you wish to go. I'll talk more about this as well as what my client opted for as we tackle each area. I hope you guys enjoy the video, and let's get to it. As I've discussed in many past videos, I'm a strong advocate for the importance of effective organisation because it allows for higher productivity. So, although I don't always film this setting up part where I'm filling my buckets, mixing my chemicals and laying everything out, I always do my best to be as well organised and prepared as possible before I even think about touching the car. As always, I'll try to list the products I'm using on screen as I get to each area. But just quickly, there's been a few of you guys asking me about my thoughts on the local detailing brand Merch, which has been around for many years, but has more recently had a major revamp and relaunch to coincide with its growing success. So I just wanted to share that I've been extremely impressed with the brand the more I've been testing and using it over the past year, with a few standout products like G3 Grim Reaper, their wheel and tyre cleaner, K1 Kraken, their snow and foam wash, Z2 Duce, which is a very versatile APC, and I also think H5 and K5, their SiO2 snow foam and spray sealants are definitely worth a look. It's an uphill battle for any Australian-owned detailing brand to make, develop and manufacture products here locally, and more importantly, make them both class-leading and affordable, all of which I think Merch has succeeded in. So I have been slowly testing their massive range and adding a few of their products to my arsenal, and I just wanted to share for you Aussies watching that this is definitely a brand worth having a closer look at, especially for your pro detailers with the 2.5 and 10 litre bulk quantities available at pretty remarkable prices considering the quality and performance you get. So first up, let's start with the wheels. As is the case with every area of detailing, the wheels can also be tackled in many different ways, from a basic clean and sealant application to a deeper clean and wheels on coating process, which is what my client opted for here. Some of you may have seen the many wheels off detailing processes I've done over the years that can also include inner wheel well cleaning and coating, as well as wheel polishing steps. So in the end, it really comes down to what's most important to the client and what fits within their budget. With this particular process, you can see I started with a pre-chemical treatment of both my tyre and wheel or rim cleaner to firstly remove the majority of the grime in a safe, touchless manner. This first step is important because once the bulk of the surface contamination is removed, it avoids scuffing and swirling the alloy rims that would otherwise happen if you just started brushing with all that wheel grime in place. I then reapplied the chemicals and began my second step of performing an in-depth physical clean using a variety of wheel brushes and mitts to remove the more stubborn baked-on dirt and contamination. All in all, this cleaning process takes me about 15 minutes per wheel, or about an hour in total for the set. Now, there's no denying that removing the wheels will allow for a more thorough clean, especially for the inner wheel barrels, brake calipers, and inner wheel well components. But a wheels off process takes at least an hour, if not two, per wheel and wheel well clean, or 4 to 8 hours in total depending on the vehicle, so it is quite a difference in labour and cost. But I think the wheels came up great, and you'll hopefully see after they are ceramic coated just how much more they popped and shined. Next up was the engine bay clean. This was actually a main area of discontent for the owner, and I had to agree that for a 4-year-old vehicle, it was a little dirtier than you'd expect, perhaps indicating the vehicle has been driven on dusty roads quite a bit, and certainly indicating that the engine was about to get its first ever clean. Using compressed air to blow off as much loose dirt and particles as possible is always my first step, as the more you can remove prior to wet cleaning, the better your chemicals will work, meaning you don't need to use as strong concentrations and the less grit and mud you'll have to deal with. I used some masking plastic and tape to cover some of the more water sensitive areas like the alternator and some of the more susceptible electrical connectors. I divided the engine bay into about half a dozen areas, and section by section, I started with my pre-chemical treatment of my all-purpose cleaner, allowed it to sit for a minute or two, and then using the same dilution of the APC in my Tornador air tool, I began using the tool to blast and clean each area bit by bit. I'll quickly mention that you can absolutely remove the plastic engine covers and other plastic mouldings and covers, as I have shown in past videos, but my advice is don't directly spray liquid under those covered components. Just spray your cleaner onto a cloth and wipe them down, as they're typically covered for a reason. Overall, I'd say the Tornador removed about 90% of all the grime, but there were a few areas where I grabbed my detailing brushes to remove a little more stubborn, greasy films and contamination. As I've mentioned many times in the past, the greatest feature of using the Tornador to clean engine bays is its rinsing ability that allows you to switch to clean water and flush the cleaning chemicals and lifted dirt off the surface using so little liquid to rinse it all down, which is so ideal for water sensitive areas like engine bays. And I can tell you that using this same method for about 10 years now, I've never once had any issues of water damage whatsoever. To finish the engine bay stage, I once again grabbed my compressed air with a microfiber towel and dried the area down. The final step is always turning the engine over and allowing it to reach normal operating temperature that will evaporate any remaining moisture. I'll be dressing and sealing the engine bay a little later on, but I think just this cleaning process on its own was such an amazing turnaround and well worth the effort. So on to the exterior clean and decontamination process. I started with a pre-wash snow foam treatment using a mixture of my wash soap and an APC in my foam cannon. There's three main considerations in order to get the most benefits out of this first touchless cleaning step. First is by using an appropriate alkaline leaning detergent that's more effective at breaking down and degreasing the surface contamination. Secondly is allowing the foam and chemicals enough time to work effectively, which means leaving them on as long as possible or just before they entirely dry or start streaking. And thirdly is following up with a very thorough and methodical pressure washing rinsing step that keeps your pressure washer beam close to the surface, moves slowly across the vehicle, and runs over every inch of the paint and trims. So what I'm trying to point out here is that steps and methods are all nice and dandy, but if you don't execute them with good proper technique and goal-orientated pursuits, that will be reflected in your results. The next step was a physical hand wash using an acid-leaning detergent. So where alkaline-leaning detergents and chemicals tend to be better at degreasing and removing road dirt and oily films, acidic detergents and chemicals tend to be superior at treating mineral deposits and fallout particles. One thing I found very interesting is the amazing relationship between the two, where in order for the acidic cleaners to work their best, it's firstly important to degrease and strip off that first layer of road film with an alkaline chemical, which then allows the acidic detergents to work so much more effectively. Around the more intricate areas of the vehicle where large wash mitts struggle to clean effectively, I used my smaller detailing brush to agitate and dislodge some of the build-up dirt and grime. I do still find that a good APC tends to work best here, but as I have shown in past videos, you can also use mineral spot removers and even tar removers at times to treat contamination build-up in those areas. The best advice I can give here is to make this brushing out of your trims process part of your periodic car cleaning routine, as doing this just a couple of times a year will have a profound benefit in eliminating that staining and build up around badges, side mirrors, door handles, grills and window trims. When I first inspected this vehicle, I did immediately notice that there was quite a bit of water spotting and etching. So I wanted to do a 50-50 demonstration on the glass so you guys can see how water spotting and etching looks before and after treatment. A clear sign of water spotting, apart from seeing the spots themselves, is that the bulk of the water sheets fairly quickly, but as it sheets, it also leaves rather unappealing or oddly shaped water droplets that cling to the mineral deposits. After I treat the area by spraying my water spot remover on, allowing it to dwell, and then physically wiping it in before rinsing, you'll hopefully see that now the water sheeting is dramatically slower, but also cleaner in not leaving droplets behind. That, in a nutshell, is how clean and bare paint, or in this case, glass, should interact with water. Now the caveat to that is that when car glass is new or in non-contaminated condition, it is naturally hydrophobic. So in that instance, you shouldn't be looking for slow pulling water, but rather sheeting and even beading performance. But once the surface of the glass has been corrupted like this, it is necessary to strip it back to a hydrophilic state in order to have good success in applying a coating, as I will be later on. Lastly here, it's also important to mention that I will be polishing the glass prior to coating, and that'll actually have the most benefit in not only removing the remaining mineral etchings, especially around the glass edges, but also in creating a beautiful, clean and brilliant finish that only polishing can produce. The reason I'm doing this chemical treatment first is that it will massively reduce the amount of time it takes me to polish the glass compared to not removing the bulk of the minerals first. A good detailer is constantly assessing and responding to results, but it doesn't take a brain surgeon to discover that this vehicle does have high levels of bonded contamination that will require more steps and labour to remove. Now, believe it or not, half of that grit and scratchy sound was actually due to the immense amount of mineral deposits that are not only on the glass, but also all over the paint. So the paint itself also needed the same deep descaling as I demonstrated on the glass. But the other half of that remaining grit was environmental fallout, in which I treated it with an iron removal clay lubricant and a synthetic clay cloth. Now, much like I previously demonstrated, a great sign of clean bare paint is slow pooling water behaviour, but the other things to assess are a smooth surface that should be near silent when you run your hand over it, but should also be a little grippy or tacky. That's what clean bare paint looks and feels like, and that's really the ultimate goal of this whole process. To sum up the whole decontamination side of this detailing process so far, I'd say the wheels took about as long as I estimated, while the engine bay actually went a little quicker than predicted, while this final exterior deep cleanse definitely took a couple of hours longer than anticipated, just because of all the excessive mineral deposits that this highly metallic grey paint does a fantastic job at hiding. But all in all, a great, though very long first day, with objectives achieved, and tomorrow, a little interior work, engine bay sealing and paint correction preparation is the goal. The overall cleanliness of the interior was actually quite good, as I do believe the owner himself put a little work into it. But the seats were a different case, with high levels of staining in certain areas that are more obvious to see on the white accent trims. Leathers and vinyls can be more sensitive to aggressive cleaning chemicals, so I decided to use a more gentle cleaner to treat them. What I found worked best here was an initial clean using a horsehair brush to agitate the cleaner and then wipe it off with the majority of the lifted grime. But then a follow-up with my cleaning pad seemed to greatly help in removing a little more of the lingering deeper staining. Now, I could have easily used a more aggressive cleaner and most likely gotten the surface clean in one go, but given the option, I'd rather spend a little more time and proceed a little more cautiously, as I have found throughout the decades that over the long haul, leathers and soft vinyls do hold up better if you can avoid aggressive cleaners. Now, to be honest, I was a little confused with these seats and kept questioning if they were natural leather or textured vinyl, and there was some strange mismatched pattern textures that left me asking some questions about what was going on here. I did end up researching the seats, and it turns out that they're a hybrid mix of true leather and synthetic vinyl, but that still didn't explain the weird textured flat spots that seemed more like a quality control issue. In any case, hopefully you can see the difference even on the darker grey colour, where after it's been well cleaned, we've not only removed the general grime and staining, but also the oily films that leaves the surface looking brighter and less shiny, which is what clean, natural leather or even synthetic leather should look like.
Get a chance to close my eyes. If you're gonna make it soon, maybe we could get our room, but I need some rest from gloom. Otherwise I feel I'm doomed. You be looking over like you really know me. Maybe take a picture, take a couple, guess for free. I don't wanna give another guarantee.
After all the seats were cleaned from top to bottom, it was then time to treat and protect their finish. For this I used CarPro Lotion, which has become a favourite product of mine for both leathers and vinyl materials. Applying it to a whole seat at a time, the product was thoroughly worked into the material, given a little time to absorb and self-level, and then any excess product was levelled with a microfiber cloth. The reason I've really come to love lotion is because it tends to give leathers and vinyls a more supple and softer feel without creating any shine or slippery finish, and doesn't leave any strong chemical smells behind. Now, although my client just opted to have the seats deep cleaned and treated rather than a full interior clean, I did still give the cabin a quick vacuum, wipe down, and cleaned all the interior glass as a complimentary service.
I prayed that they were wrong, but I'm still happy now. Just think of what could be if I was still around. The schedules were free.
Next up was the engine bay dressing. I started with an IPA wipe down to prepare the surface for better adhesion with the dressing. I've actually been testing and experimenting a little bit with Koshemi Motorplast, and it has become my absolute favourite engine bay dressing and sealant over the past year. Now, you can absolutely just lightly spray it over the engine bay and leave it at that, as per instructions, and look, it works quite nicely and is very convenient in that way. However, what I've been trialing over the past year is a few variations of applications, and what I've settled on and found works so amazingly and just looks outstanding is applying it a little more generously and then using compressed air to blow and spread it into the more intricate areas that I've simply found that there's really no other way to achieve as good and thorough uniform coverage and finish. I'll then let it sit for up to half an hour and come back and level off the excess, and even use compressed air again to get it dry, leveled and uniform. I'll also add here that I've had zero issues applying it in this manner, and being that it is a water-based dressing, it's a lot more forgiving and issue-free in that way. Now, it's certainly a lot more work than the spray and forget method application, and I do recommend doing it prior to paint correction or protection stages, just because you can get a bit of product overspill. But I just can't deny how amazing the results have been, and I'll actually say here that the engine bay was my very favourite result and outcome of this entire job. It was then time for some pre-correction work, starting with an IPA wipe down over all the paint, glass and trims. This alcohol cleansing step is all about removing any lingering chemical residue, moisture, dust or any other foreign matter prior to paint correction, and it'll also allow your masking tape to bond more securely to the trims. I then measured the paint. This step is more about identifying any potential issues like past damage and resprayed panels where you should tread more lightly, and just trying to gain an overall or average reading of the paint's thickness. Now, there didn't seem to be any indications of past repairs, which was great to see, and the paint also seemed to have a healthy amount of thickness. Measuring in the door jamb areas with an average of about 70 microns, and the exterior paint measuring about 130 to 140 microns, gives me ample clear coat thickness and no issues or warning signs, which again was fantastic and great to see. A post-decontamination inspection with the surface grime and any waxes or sealants removed is always the best time to inspect the true condition of the paint and trims. As I mentioned before, this highly metallic silvery grey paint does a fantastic job at hiding defects and making it rather difficult to capture them on camera. But on the darker trims and clear plastics, there's no hiding the defects that do jump out, and I do believe that there's huge room for improvement here, and I'm looking forward to getting the finish to a much higher standard. So onto the paint correction, starting with some test sections to see what the paint is like and what it responds best to. Now what my client opted for here was a single stage correction process, where the main goals will be removing the vast majority of the defects, but also importantly amplifying the reflective gloss and clarity of the finish. So in a nutshell, my aim here is to find the best compound, pad and technique combination I can to remove as much of the existing defects while still finishing as good as possible in a single step. I started with a very gentle combination and technique using a fine finishing foam pad, a few drops of a fine polish, using a slow to mid machine speed, light to moderate pressure, doing 3 quick row passes for about 60 seconds of polishing in total in an area about 6 times the size of my pad. So for those of you that may be new to paint correction, this is about as gentle as it gets in polishing car paint, with next to no clear coat removal. I then performed an IPA wipe down to remove the polishing oils before inspecting the results. Now, this is an extremely difficult paint to capture on camera, but hopefully you can see that this combination worked very well to remove some light oxidation, haze, and even some minor swirls and etchings. So the finishing quality has been greatly improved. However, it's only removed about 50% of the existing defects at best, so I will need a combination with a bit more bite to further address them. For a second test section, I moved to a slightly firmer polishing pad using a touch more product with a medium compound. I jumped to a mid machine speed, used more moderate pressure, and did an extra row passes or polished for about 90 seconds in total. Now in this section, I saw a much better defect removal rate, edging toward that 70 to 80%, and just as importantly, the finish was even better than the first test section, as more of the oxidation, fine swirls, and haze were removed, allowing the paint to be a little more clear and reflective. Now, although the prior section fits within what I've promised my client in terms of results, I tried another test section sticking with the same medium compound, but try and get with a slightly more aggressive intermediate or one-step foam pad. I also added an extra drop of product, bumped my machine speed from 4 to 4.5, used more moderate to heavy pressure, and did 5 row passes in total or polished for about 2 minutes in this set. I'll show you a few more test sections shortly where you'll hopefully be able to see the results a little better on camera, but this combination and technique was clearly the best so far, easily removing 80 to 90% of the defects and mimicking the prior section in terms of fantastic gloss and clarity in the finish. Now just to finish off this testing part, I wanted to show you the results using a more aggressive foam cutting pad with a more aggressive cutting compound and technique, using even a little more product, pressure, slightly higher speed, and longer polishing cycles. Now, defect removal wise, this combination has removed at least 95 to 99% of the defects, but what you should be able to see is quite a bit of compounding haze left in the finish. So if my client did want me to pursue this higher level of defect removal, this would have actually worked great as a first cutting stage, but it would require a second finer polishing step to remove the compounding haze and marring, basically a 2-step process. But just keep in mind that it also requires far more clear-coat sacrifice to pursue this, and I actually think that in this case it's not worth the extra time, cost, and increased clear-coat removal for something like a daily use family car. Now, method-wise, while working on each panel, I used my bigger 5-inch machine to correct the larger, flatter areas, and my smaller 3-inch, 2-inch, and even 1-inch machines and pads to address the edges and more intricate panel areas and trims. Now, as is the case with most vehicles these days, many of the piano black and even clear plastic trims do often have softer and more sensitive clear coats applied. So on those trims, I found that I did actually need to do a 2-stage process, firstly using the same medium compound and pad I was using on the rest of the paint to remove the defects, but I then had to switch to an even finer polish and pad combination to remove the increased haze that those softer paints were creating. So in the end guys, the paint decides what it likes, and as detailers we need to always assess and respond. The difficult thing about consumers selecting detailing services and paint correction in particular is that it's open to varying standards and interpretation. So what one detailer sells as a one-step correction service can vary widely to what another sells and does. As I mentioned earlier, pretty much everything I do these days is high-end work, regardless of what service or level of service my clients select. And just to be clear, high-end detailing work doesn't mean you work on expensive or exotic cars, nor does it mean you have a fancy shop, a tailored uniform, or an espresso machine in your reception area. High-end work is all result-based, meaning regardless of the vehicle or environment, you put the painstaking hours in, you critique and respond to your work, and you have the skill set and dedication needed to get the job done. That's it. So for any of you aspiring detailers who may be watching, the only barrier to entry in being a top-notch detailer is lots of hard work, skill development, and standards. Though there's nothing wrong with a nice espresso machine. The final part of this correction stage was removing the mineral edgings and giving the glass a much needed polish to restore its clarity. Now, as bad as the water spots and edgings looked in certain places, they were actually far less severe than they were prior to the chemical treatment I did during the decontamination stage. So just using the same medium compound and foam pad I was using on the paint was actually enough to remove them. Now, I won't lie, it was still quite a lengthy process achieving edge-to-edge mineral spot removal on all the glass that did require using my smaller pads and machines quite a bit. But as I did mention earlier on, and as you will hopefully be able to see, there's just such a huge benefit in polishing glass that goes beyond removing water edgings, as I find it's the only way to produce that true, clean and transparent clear finish that almost makes the glass disappear when you're inside the cabin. And the other important benefit is that polished glass creates the ideal finish for your glass ceramic coating to strongly bond to it. It took a while, but we've finally hit the home stretch, which is the coating stage, starting with the wheels.
These days are running slow.
As with each area I coated, I firstly started by using compressed air to remove any dust, and then performed an IPA wipe down. With coating wheels, my general method and technique is using a foam applicator and applying ample product to the pad that will be enough to coat the entire wheel face. I'll start by firstly dabbing the coating over the whole area, secondly performing a quick wipe in over the surface for even distribution, and thirdly I'll begin by doing a more in-depth application, making sure I go over every area of the wheel face several times. Now, depending on the weather, sometimes the coating can be ready to be leveled down immediately, or at most, it may need a minute or so to finish flashing prior to wiping it down with my microfiber cloths. Now, what you'll see as I progress with coating the wheels, glass, paint and plastic trims is that I will be using the same ceramic coating for every area, which is worth explaining why. Everything I do and use is always based on my own testing, and what I've personally found when comparing consumer-based dedicated wheel, plastic and even glass coatings to my professional paint coatings is that the pro paint coatings do tend to outperform them in terms of behaviour, durability and even looks. So I'm guilty of being complacent in the past, not even questioning that a paint-specific ceramic coating could possibly be better on areas like glass, wheels and plastics, but based on my own testing, that seems to be the case. Now, it's only fair to mention that the pro paint coatings I use are more difficult and time-consuming to apply to wheels and glass compared to using more dedicated wheel and glass coatings that do tend to have easier and more forgiving user experiences. Not to mention they're also a lot more affordable at about half the price, and obviously if you're not certified to use those pro coatings, you don't have access to them. Now, I'm not saying that every specific paint coating will outperform every specific wheel, glass or trim coating. In fact, that's not been the case during my testing. What I am saying is that many of the specific pro coatings I use have outperformed the specific consumer-based trim coatings by comparison. So the moral of the story here is that just because most brands sell dedicated wheel, trim and glass coatings, it doesn't always mean that they are better options. But the only way to really find that out is to spend the time and put that to the test.
Places on the road, and I'm coming close to this, I'm sure. Gonna try to save the sunrise the same. But tell me, have you ever danced in the rain?
Next up was coating all the exterior glass. Now, application-wise, it's really quite similar to coating the paint, but with a few little things to keep in mind. Firstly is that clean, polished glass won't tend to accept as much coating as your car's paint, as it is a less textured and tighter surface. So using a little less product on your applicator will make the application and wipe down easier. You'll also tend to find that the flash time will be slower on glass compared to paint, and that also goes for coating materials like vinyls and PPF. You don't need to use as much product, and the flash times tend to be longer unless the glass or films aren't in great condition, in which case they will absorb and require more of the coating. I've always had a bit of a love-hate relationship with car glass, as it can be such a pain to restore its true clarity both inside and out, and there's not a lot of forgiveness when it's not done right. But on the flip side of that, when glass is detailed to a high standard, there's just nothing like its true clear transparency matched to its highly reflective gloss. It really is such an amazing material. The final step was coating the paint and plastic trims. Application-wise, the coating was applied in horizontal and vertical overlapping lines to an area about a square metre in size at a time. When trying to assess the flash or wipe down time, we're always looking for things like dry streaking, rainbow effects, and a little grip with our cloths as great signs that enough of the carrier solvents have dissipated and that the coating has sufficiently bonded to the surface, or in other words, has flashed and is ready to have its excess product removed, leveled down to a clear, brilliant finish. I know this has been a very long video, so let's start to wrap it up. There's always a fine balance to be met with each and every job I undertake, and even stepping back from this job, I know there's some areas that could have been done better given the time and budget. The part of detailing, not only for the love of it, but also for a living, is making calls that find the right balance of delivering great results that still enable room for profit. That's the hard thing to sometimes put across in a long, in-depth video, but easier to do with a showcase reel. But with that said, I was really happy with the end result and can comfortably say my client was extremely pleased and thankful, which in the end is what it's really all about. Even to this very day, after decades of detailing cars, I do still find something a little unique and special about the final protection stage. And that's true regardless of whether I'm applying a car wax, sealant or ceramic coating. Unless you do have the detailing bug embedded deep within you, it's hard to explain, but if you know, you know, and if you don't, there's a little something you're missing out on. I think the best way to explain it is like reaching a summit. It's a journey to say the least. I mean, this job itself was a week of my life, from the first contact of the wheel cleaning, to the engine bay, exterior cleanse, interior cabin, and paint correction. So this final stage is almost like reaching the peak and finally being rewarded with the beautiful view. You make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. To know God is the real reward of perfect joy. I pray you all put your trust in Him. May God bless each and every one of you. Stay strong, stay faithful, and I'll see you next time. Here she is. I'll turn on the lights.
Wow. Fantastic. Yeah, it really does look like a completely different car.
I'll show you the interior too.
That's amazing. They look brand new now. Absolutely, yes. I think it's all come up really nicely. Gosh, that's really come up well. Yeah, that's one of the first things I noticed. I do love a good engine, good clean engine bay. It's come up absolutely fantastically. Yeah, I mean, it looks incredible. Very happy with that.
Cause a dream is just a dream. It doesn't mean anything. In a dream.